Learned from Hurricane Katrina are on the mind of many in the Gulf Coast nearly 7 years to the day. And joining us now is Michael Brown, former director of FEMA. Mr. Brown, it's great to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Joe. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's going to be 7 years, I guess. Can you take us back and compare and contrast the differences you think in terms of where FEMA is today and where FEMA was back when you were director?
Oh, sure. I think there are three big differences, but it's really not FEMA. The biggest differences are, as you were just hearing on the report with the Army Corps of Engineers, there's a $15 billion investment by the taxpayers to improve the levee system and the flood control system around the city. Now, I'm not convinced that Isaac is going to turn into the storm that will really test the design requirements of the levee and flood control system, but this is nonetheless a test for it to see if, even though it may not test the limits, let's see if this system works. I think it's going to, so that's a huge difference.
You know,
but to me,
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But to me, the two most important differences are Mayor Mitch Landrieu and Governor Bobby Jindal. I mean, both of those guys were in Katrina. I mean, Bobby was a congressman at the time, and Mitch was serving as lieutenant governor. And both of those saw the mistakes that their predecessors made by not doing the early kind of things that both Mitch and Bobby are doing. And by doing those early things, declaring an emergency, already starting to talk to their population about what they should or shouldn't do, about what they should expect or not expect. To me, that makes the biggest difference between Katrina and what we're seeing in Isaac.
In looking at what has been done, the $15 billion that was spent, and looking at what needed to be done to the levees, to me, I was struck by how vulnerable New Orleans was to Katrina, and then the idea that anyone could have made a huge difference, as if the response could have changed the outcome, and the way that in a vacuum that entire event was sort of defined by the media. I mean, I honestly think, you know, and George Bush and you and everybody else, and huge calamities, it wouldn't have mattered whether, I just look at it now and I just wonder about how, you know, whether it was fair the way everything was defined back then.
Joe, I can hear in your voice the same frustration that I was experiencing 7 years ago. And then as I watch this thing unfold now, the differences are stark. I think the media learned some lessons. The media learned lessons that, one, things don't always go as expected. I think, two, the difference is, for example, there's no call right now to have a shelter of last resort. You may recall that Mayor Nagin decided to use the Superdome. The Superdome was structurally engineered to only withstand a Category 3, and we had a Category 5. So I think some of those things that created some of the pictures that we saw in the media, those things have gone away. Those kinds of decisions aren't being made at state and local governments. But behind the scenes within the Department of Homeland Security, I think there's a subtle change also. There was the question, frankly, of who was in charge. And I think we've now defined that. And Congress has said when there is a natural or man-made disaster and FEMA is responding, FEMA is in charge. And so I think the chain of command has been fixed. A lot of things have been changed. And if you add on top of all of that, the media's awareness that maybe they played into some of the misinformation too, I think is going to make a huge difference. But putting all of that aside, I think the thing to remember about what's happening today is, while we have a big storm, it's not a Category 5 out in the Gulf. The trajectory of the storm has changed. This is going to be a major wind and probably a lot of localized flooding and some flooding. You're not going to see, other than it being the same day, the same landfall date, I think things are dramatically different on a whole set of levels.
Mr. Brown, I realize that this is not the same storm, and as you mentioned, other than the date being the same, you're not going to see a repeat. But based on what you said about the lessons that have been learned, the changes that have been put in place, is it fair to say that we would not see a repeat of what happened in New Orleans again on United States soil?
Well, I don't think you'd see a repeat of it, but here's the thing that we will at some point see a repeat of, whether it's an earthquake, another hurricane or something. And that is that despite the size of the federal government, despite the size of a state like California or New York or for that matter Florida, There will be a natural or man-made disaster where it's, and this is why we warn people to be prepared to be on your own for at least 72 hours. There is just not enough money. There's not enough, we could bilk the taxpayers of all of their wealth, and we could not build a system that's going to take care of everybody all at once. And I think that's a lesson that people are beginning. I know Craig Fugate talks about it. I continue to talk about it in speaking engagements around the world, that you have to, on an individual basis, be ready to take care of yourself. The government can't take care of everybody.
All right. Michael Brown, thank you. We appreciate you coming on today and sharing that with us. And good luck. We'll see you later. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Becky.